Nathan moved with practiced precision, mopping the gleaming floor of the luxury car dealership. His hunched shoulders and furrowed brow betrayed the weight he carried, both literal and metaphorical. The faded blue uniform hung loosely on his frame, its embroidered name tag a quiet reminder of how invisible he was to those around him. His worn shoes squeaked faintly with each step, an almost imperceptible soundtrack to his daily grind. Around him, the salesmen laughed and joked, their animated conversations filling the showroom like a symphony of privilege. But Nathan wasn't part of their world. To them, he was just the janitor. Once, as he passed by, he overheard one whisper to another, "That guy over there? I don't even know his name. He's just the janitor." Nathan sighed, gripping the mop handle tighter. "If only they knew what I carry on my back," he thought, his chest tightening. In the corner of the showroom, Marshall, the manager, stood observing potential customers with a calcul. "How is she doing?" Nathan forced a weak smile, gratitude mingling with the heaviness in his heart. "Thank you, Mrs. Vera. She's holding on." As he took the bag, Nathan resolved silently that no matter how many times the world tried to push him down, he wouldn't let it break him or his dreams. "Ask, explain." Nathan nodded politely as Mrs. Vera handed him the bag, her eyes soft with concern. "I brought these for you and your mother," she said gently. "How's she doing?" How is she doing?" "Ask, explain." Nathan nodded politely as Mrs. Vera handed him the bag, her eyes soft with concern. "I brought these for you and your mother," she said gently. "How is she doing?" "I think it's okay." And he nodded politely. "How is she doing?" "Hanging on," Nathan replied, his voice strained. He forced a small smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Thank you, Mrs. Vera. You're always looking out for us." She patted his arm warmly. "You're strong, Nathan. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Life has a way of turning things around when you least expect it." Her words lingered in his mind as he climbed the stairs to their apartment, the weight of the groceries adding to the heaviness already pressing down on him. Inside, Geisha Mathis, Boston 70 at kaishime.com. Nathan's hands trembled as Mrs. Vera spoke the words he'd been dreading. "Nathan, your mother is not well. I did what I could to help, but she needs care that you cannot provide here. Have you thought about asking for help?" He took a deep breath, his jaw tightening. "I appreciate it, Mrs. Vera, but asking for help isn't that simple," he replied, his voice steady, despite the storm raging inside him. When Nathan returned home, he found his mother even frailer than the night before. Her once vibrant spirit seemed to have dimmed further, and every movement appeared to cost her immense effort. He prepared a quick soup, carefully helping her eat, but each spoonful felt like an insurmountable task for her. Watching her struggle, Nathan's thoughts spiraled into chaos. Something had to change. He knew that. But how? "Mom," he whispered, his voice cracking under the weight of emotion. "I won't leave you like this. I promise I'll find a way." The next morning, back at work, Nathan resolved that I don't have time for janitor's dreams. With that, he turned back to his computer, dismissing Nathan as if he were nothing. But Nathan didn't leave defeated. Instead, he straightened his shoulders, gripping the mop tighter. This wasn't the end, it was the beginning. Whatever it took, he would rise above their doubts, their ridicule, their cruelty. For his mother, for himself, and for the dream of a better tomorrow. Ask, explain. Marian messages became lifelines for countless souls. It wasn't a permanent solution, but it bought them time. And right now, time was everything. His neighbor knocked softly on the door, carrying a plate of food. "You look like you haven't eaten all day," she said kindly, placing the dish in front of him. "Eat. You can't take care of your mum if you collapse from exhaustion." Nathan managed a weak smile. "Thanks. Really, I mean it. I couldn't do any of this without people like you." She waved off his gratitude. "We're all we've got. Nathan, don't forget that." As he ate, Nathan allowed himself a rare moment of quiet reflection. Life had thrown everything it could at him: poverty, rejection, fear. But he hadn't broken yet. Each challenge only hardened his resolve. His mother had always taught him to face adversity head-on, to never give up no matter how bleak things seemed. And now, more than ever, he understood why. The following morning, Nathan arrived at the hospital early. Clutching the envelope containing the money he painstakingly Ignoring Marshall's taunts, he stepped away from the counter and walked outside, approaching the man. "I'm sorry about that," Nathan said softly, his voice sincere. "I know it's not easy to be treated like that. Can I help you with something?" The man looked up, surprised, but still burdened by sadness. Before he could respond, Marshall and the others appeared behind Nathan, their smirks dripping with contempt. "Stop wasting your time with this guy," Marshall spat. "You'll never know how to identify a real client, Nathan. He's already been kicked out of the store. This is a waste of time." The words hit Nathan like a punch to the gut. Shame washed over him, but he forced himself to focus on the man in front of him. Despite the growing doubt in his mind, he pushed forward. "It's okay," the man said quietly, offering a sad smile. "I came here with a purpose, but I think I was mistaken about the place." Nathan's heart sank. "You deserve to be treated with respect, regardless of how much M." Deep down, Nathan knew the pressure was gnawing at him more than he cared to admit. He tried to shake off the suffocating feeling of powerlessness that clung to him like a shadow, but it stubbornly refused to fade. The day dragged on without much change, and Nathan spent the rest of his shift in a state of quiet apprehension. Every move felt scrutinized, every word dissected. He attempted to focus on the work, but the memory of the man's gratitude lingered in his mind like an echo he couldn't silence. "I did the right thing, didn't I?" he thought, though doubt continued to gnaw at him. Marshall's cutting remarks and the other salesman's criticisms still rang in his ears, making him feel as though he'd failed somehow. Yet the man's kindness offered a small solace, a flicker of hope he wasn't sure he deserved. When the clock finally struck lunchtime, Nathan decided to leave the store to clear his head. Physically and emotionally drained, he walked aimlessly through the streets, searching. "It's just, everything seems so difficult right now. I'm trying to find my way, but it's been complicated." The man nodded, as if he'd heard those words countless times before. There was no surprise in his expression, only understanding. "I get it," he said softly, glancing out the window, where the sun was beginning to dip below the horizon. "I've been through moments like that too." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "You know, I dream of buying a luxury car one day," he revealed, his gaze distant, as if lost in thought. "One of those cars you see in showrooms and wonder, what if I could drive one of those?" A sudden jolt ran through Nathan. He wasn't sure why, but something about that dream resonated deeply within him. His view of success had always been limited, shaped by practicality and necessity. But hearing the man speak stirred something unfamiliar, a longing he hadn't allowed himself to consider. "You'll make it," Nathan said impulsively, surprising even himself. "Come to my farm. It's not very far. Bring the paperwork and sell me a car, Silas said, locking eyes with Nathan. The request caught Nathan off guard. He had never imagined he'd have a real opportunity to make a sale, let alone one this big. I would love to, Nathan replied, his voice tinged with excitement that was quickly building inside him like a fire. I'll do my best to make sure you leave there with exactly what you want. Silas nodded, and for the first time in days, a small flame of hope flickered in Nathan's chest. I'll be waiting for you. You can find me. I'll be there on the farm. Call me Silas. With that, the man stood up and handed Nathan a card bearing the name and address of the farm before walking out of the restaurant. Nathan held the card tightly, feeling an electric charge run through him. Something important was about to happen. He could sense it. I'm not going to waste this chance, he thought as the image of Silas lingered in his mind. The invitation burned F. But the manager wasn't convinced. He stepped closer, snatching the papers from Nathan's hands. You really think you can make a sale without consulting us first? He sneered, a cruel smile twisting his lips. You're a nuisance here, Nathan. You'll never be a real salesman. You don't have the profile for it, nor the vision. You don't belong here. Humiliation crashed over Nathan like a tidal wave, threatening to swallow him whole. It felt as though the ground beneath his feet was crumbling. I just wanted to try, he stammered, grasping for words that wouldn't come. This isn't for you, boy, the manager snapped, raising his voice. You'll never be more than a failure. You're trying to steal opportunities, aren't you? Robbing me of the chance to train a real salesman. Each word pierced Nathan like a knife, cutting deep into his self-worth. Shame consumed him, wrapping its suffocating grip around his heart. He wanted to fight back, to defend himself, but the weight of the moment left. Nathan tried to mask his admiration, but the farmer's knowing laugh betrayed him. Yes, it's big, the man said with a wry smile, as if he'd anticipated Nathan's reaction. But everything here has a purpose. Every piece of land, every corner, it all means something. It's hard work, sure, but this is my life. They moved into the living room, where the farmer gestured for Nathan to sit down. With an air of finality, he grabbed a pen from the table. All right, let's get down to business, he said firmly. Show me what you've got, Nathan. You've convinced me with your attitude so far. Now prove to me you know what you're doing. Nathan took a deep breath and began explaining the details of the car, its performance, features, and advantages over other models. As he spoke, something remarkable happened. He grew more confident. The farmer listened intently, not interrupting once, which made Nathan feel valued in a way he hadn't before. With each nod of approval, the idea that he was finally being. Anxiety tightened his stomach as he muttered, "The manager." The thought of facing Mr. Marshall again filled him with dread. I don't know if I'll be able to face him after what happened. Silas looked at him sternly. You need to be strong, Nathan. It'll be worth it. You'll see. He gave Nathan a light pat on the back, a gesture of encouragement before turning to leave. Over his shoulder, he added, I told you, boy, life is short. Don't be afraid to do what's right. As Nathan watched him walk away, those words echoed in his mind. Clutching the papers tightly, he felt the weight of what lay ahead pressing down on him. The path back to the dealership seemed impossibly long, each step heavy with doubt and resolution. He knew the confrontation wouldn't be easy. There would be risks, challenges, but he couldn't turn back now, not after everything he'd been through. He arrived at the dealership, his hands trembling as he clutched the papers. This could be his chance to secure something better. The streets that once felt familiar now stretched endlessly before him, mocking his defeat. How could he go home? How could he face his mother without a job, without money? She needed medicine, medicine he couldn't afford now. Each step felt like another nail in the coffin of his dreams. When he finally reached the apartment, the sight of the closed door did nothing to ease the ache in his chest. He paused, hoping against hope that life might offer him a second chance. But when he opened the door, all he found was an eviction notice pinned to it. The bold letters screamed at him. Rent has not been paid. Immediate eviction. Nathan stared at the paper, the words glowing with cruel intensity. Tears welled in his eyes, blurring the harsh reality written before him. He looked at the notice one last time, the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. What else could he do? Ask, explain. The manager's face twisted into an expression of disdain as he leaned back in. But the overwhelming sense of helplessness paralyzed him. He knew he didn't have the strength to fight back. "You're not going to work here anymore," the manager declared coldly, as if delivering a verdict rather than firing someone. "It's not just because you're not cut out for sales, but because no one is ever going to buy a luxury car from these brands with a guy like you." Those final words hit Nathan like a hammer blow. With a cruel flourish, the manager snatched the sales papers and tore them up in front of everyone. The sound of the ripping paper seemed deafening, echoing through the room like the shredding of Nathan's dignity. "You're fired," the manager announced with a satisfied smirk. "And don't come to me with excuses. There's no more room for you here." Nathan stood frozen, despair spreading through his body like poison. The humiliation was suffocating, the manager's words reverberating in his mind like a death sentence for his dreams. His legs felt weak, and for a moment, Nathan stood frozen. The eviction notice crumpled in his trembling hands like it was on fire. His heart felt heavy, each beat a reminder of the impossible situation he was in. He took one last look at the building, hoping against hope that reality might shift and this nightmare would dissolve into nothing. But no miracle came. The truth remained. He couldn't leave his mother without an explanation. Yet the words stuck in his throat like shards of glass. Taking a shaky breath, Nathan decided to try something, anything. If not now, there would be no other chance. Maybe, just maybe, the building owner could find some shred of compassion for his predicament. With every step toward the office, anxiety clawed at his chest, tightening its grip until he thought he might collapse. The glass door was slightly ajar, but Nathan didn't have the courage to knock. Instead, he pushed it open with a trembling hand. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice quivering despite his best efforts to sound. She touched his hand weakly, her gaze filled with sorrow. "I don't know what's going to happen to us either, but you tried, my son, you tried." Her words were meant to comfort, but they landed like a punch to the gut. Tried. That wasn't enough. It would never be enough. As he sat there, drowning in despair, a flicker of resolve sparked within him. He needed to tell Mr. Silas what had happened. At least then, Silas wouldn't suffer the same humiliation at the dealership. Meanwhile, miles away on his farm, Silas was preparing to pick up his newly purchased car. The thought of how Nathan had been treated and fired burned in his mind. This wasn't right. Someone had to fix it. Determined, Silas drove to the dealership, ready to confront whoever stood in his way. When he arrived, the manager greeted him with a disdainful glare, raising an eyebrow as if sizing him up. "What do you want?" the manager asked curtly, his tone dripping with condescension. Silas met his gaze head-on. "I came to pick." "Not today." "Ask, explain." Silas stood rooted in place, his jaw tightening as the manager's disdainful words hung in the air. "What do you think you're going to accomplish? Nothing. You're not in charge of anything here." Silas took a deep breath, anger simmering beneath his skin. He knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The confrontation between him and the manager had escalated into something far more personal. But Silas also understood that the stakes went beyond pride. Something needed to be done. Meanwhile, Nathan sat at home, wrestling with the enormity of his predicament. Things were spiraling out of control, and he couldn't see a way out. His heart ached for his mother, whose frailty seemed to grow heavier with each passing day. She sat across from him now, her once vibrant eyes clouded with emptiness, a reflection of the pain they both carried. He tried to focus, to think clearly, but the anxiety was suffocating. How could he possibly face all of this? The sharp ring of the doorbell startled him. "I'm more powerful than you think. This car is for refined people, not someone like your friend." He gestured toward the trash can where the torn contract lay crumpled. "That's the end of the line." Silas's patience snapped. With visible fury etched onto his face, he slammed his fists onto the desk. "You listen to me. You can't just rip apart agreements and destroy lives because it suits you. There will be consequences." The manager chuckled darkly, unfazed. "Leave now, farmer. You've overstayed your welcome." Silas straightened, his gaze hardening. Without another word, he turned and stormed out of the room. Words weren't enough. He needed action. He had gotten Nathan's address from the dealership documents and was now determined to find the young man before everything collapsed further. Back at the apartment, Nathan wrestled with the reality of his life. The eviction notice replayed in his mind like a relentless hammer, growing almost unbearable. Every second felt heavier than the L. "Ask, explain." It was then that he heard the firm knock on the door again. But this time, when Nathan opened it, it wasn't the landlord standing there. It was the farmer. His face bore a resolute expression, something determined in his eyes. "Nathan," the farmer said calmly, "I know what's happening, and I came here to help. I have a proposal for you." Nathan stared at him, confusion clouding his weary mind. "A proposal?" he asked hesitantly, unsure of what to expect. "I have nothing left." Nathan continued, his voice heavy with despair. "There's nothing more you can do for me." The farmer smiled slightly and extended his hand. "I want you and your mother to come live on my farm," he said, his tone calm but unwavering. "There you'll have a home. I take care of all my employees, and you'll be able to start over." Nathan froze, shock and disbelief washing over him. "But my mother, she can't travel like that, and I don't know how we could possibly accept your help." Silas, the farmer, looked at him with, "Nothing comes easy, but life feels more peaceful when you do what's right." Silas's tone was firm yet compassionate. He understood suffering intimately because he carried his own scars. "You'll find your place here, Nathan. You'll see." Nathan, still in a state of shock, glanced at his mother. She followed everything with a blank stare, her frail body and tired expression revealing the toll her illness had taken. Yet, there was a glimmer of peace in her eyes, a quiet acceptance of the change. "And there's one more thing," Silas added gently. "We'll get all the treatment your mother needs, including any medication she requires." Nathan was speechless. It was too much. He didn't know how to respond. "I thank you, sir." In the early days, Nathan struggled to adjust to the demands of farm work. The tasks were harder than he'd imagined. "Nathan," the farmer said calmly, his voice steady and measured. "I know what's happening, and I've come here to help. I have a proposal for you." Nathan stared at him, confusion clouding his weary mind. "A proposal?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The weight of despair pressed down on him like an invisible hand. I have nothing left. There's nothing more you can do for me." The farmer smiled faintly, extending his calloused hand as if offering not just assistance, but hope itself. "I want you and your mother to come live on my farm," he said firmly, yet kindly. "You'll have a home there. I take care of all my employees, and this is your chance to start over." For a moment, silence hung between them. Shock and disbelief warred within Nathan. He shook his head, his thoughts tangled. "But my mother, she can't travel like that. And how could we possibly accept such help? We're strangers to you." Silas, the farmer, looked at him with understanding, his gaze softening. Silas greeted them with a warm smile and an outstretched hand. "Welcome," he said sincerely, his voice carrying a rare kindness. "This is where you'll start over. Make yourselves at home." In that moment, Nathan felt the crushing weight of fear and anguish begin to lift. It didn't vanish entirely. He was too cautious for that. But a fragile hope took root in its place. He didn't know what lay ahead, but for the first time in months, he allowed himself to believe things might improve. As Silas led them to the modest house reserved for workers, he began explaining how the farm operated. "We work hard here," he said, his tone firm yet compassionate. "But everything is rewarded. Life isn't easy, but it's simpler when you do what's right." Nathan listened intently, absorbing every word. Silas spoke of daily routines, responsibilities, and the importance of perseverance. Yet, beneath the practical advice lay something deeper, a shared understanding of pain and resilience. "I've lost everything." The farmer voice carried an unusual gravity as he beckoned Nathan toward the barn. "I have something important to show you," Silas said, his tone more serious than Nathan had ever heard it. The young man followed silently, curiosity mingling with a faint unease that prickled at the edges of his thoughts. When they reached the barn, Silas gestured to its weathered beams and sagging roof. "The structure's worn down," he explained, his voice steady but tinged with fatigue. "We need to make repairs before winter sets in." Nathan nodded in agreement, rolling up his sleeves to get to work. But as he glanced at the farmer, something felt off. Silas was paler than usual, his breathing shallow and labored. Though Nathan wanted to ask if everything was all right, he held back, unwilling to pry. Instead, he focused on the task at hand, chalking up the farmer's condition to exhaustion from years of relentless labor. Yet as the day wore on, Nathan couldn't ignore the signs. Silas grew increasingly. "I don't have much time left," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "I'm sick, Nathan. My health, it's failing, and I won't last much longer." The silence that followed was suffocating. Nathan felt as though the ground beneath him had shifted. The man who had taken his family in, who had taught him so much, was slipping away, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. "How long?" Nathan asked, his voice urgent. Silas didn't answer right away. His gaze drifted to the fields stretching out before them, as if searching for solace in the familiar landscape. Finally he spoke, his words barely a breath. "Not long." In the days that followed, Nathan threw himself into caring for both Silas and his mother, whose own frailty weighed heavily on his heart. Every morning, he rose before dawn to tend to the animals, repair the fences, and harvest crops, all while ensuring Silas had what he needed. Yet despite his efforts, Nathan sat on the porch, the fading light of day casting long shadows across the wooden planks. Silas, the farmer, leaned heavily against the railing, his body frail, but his eyes sharp with a wisdom that seemed to transcend time itself. "Nathan," Silas began, his voice slow and deliberate, as though each word carried the weight of years. "I know everything seems difficult now, and maybe you think you can't make it, but believe me, you can be more than what you see in the mirror." Nathan stared at him, unsure how to respond. Despite his visible weakness, Silas exuded a quiet strength, a kind of knowing that Nathan had never encountered before. "I know I'm sick," Silas continued, his gaze steady, "but that doesn't mean my time has been in vain. I see in you a strength, a light, that you haven't yet realized you have." The words struck Nathan like an arrow, piercing through layers of doubt and fear. Yet they also brought a profound sadness. "But you're not well," Nathan said, his voice firm. The silence that followed felt heavy, charged with unspoken meaning. It was as though the very air around them held its breath, waiting for something monumental to unfold. Nathan felt the weight of responsibility settling onto his shoulders. Not just the farm, but the trust Silas placed in him. The old man believed in something Nathan couldn't yet fathom, and that realization filled him with both dread and determination. On a warm afternoon, as the heat of the day began to wane, Nathan helped Silas rise from his rocking chair. Each movement grew harder for the farmer, his muscles weak, his gaze distant, as if focused on some unseen horizon. Before fully standing, Silas reached with visible effort into a nearby drawer and retrieved an envelope. "When the right time comes, I'll show you this," he said, handing it to Nathan with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. The envelope was sealed with red wax. The calligraphy on it, elegant and precise. Something about it felt out of place. The farmer, with a tired smile, tapped him on the shoulder. "Latoon, take a walk. Nathan, I need to show you something." The man's voice was weaker than usual, but there was something in it that conveyed urgency. Nathan hesitated, still absorbing the tension of the words he had just heard, but followed the farmer without questioning. He knew the man's days were numbered, but this gesture seemed important, as if he were trying to make a last impression on the young man. "I'm going to show you a path, a secret of the field that you cannot forget," said the farmer, his voice hoarse as they walked through the field. Silas spoke of the lands, the old times, and how for years he had cultivated there. More than just grains and fruits. He planted his life, his story. "Everything you see here, Nathan, is the fruit of a lot of work. I am proof that the land rewards those who don't give up," he said. Stop drink as he passed through a corn plantation. "Never give up, my friend. Even when the terrain seems barren, there is always a way to." Hand up weakly, signaling for Nathan to stay calm. "It's nothing," Silas managed, though his voice betrayed the strain he was trying to hide. His breathing grew shallow, and beads of sweat formed on his forehead. Nathan's heart raced as he quickly flagged down a passing waiter. "Call an ambulance!" Nathan shouted, his earlier sense of triumph evaporating into panic. The jovial atmosphere of the modest restaurant shifted instantly. Heads turned, whispers filled the air, and concern etched itself onto every face. Silas gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. "No hospitals," he murmured, his voice faint but firm. "Just help me sit back." Nathan hesitated, torn between respecting the farmer's wishes and ensuring his safety. But there was something in Silas's eyes, a quiet resolve that said he knew exactly what he was doing, even if it defied logic. Reluctantly, Nathan helped him lean back against the chair, steadying him with a hand on his shoulder. "You can't keep pushing." One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Nathan drove to Silas's farmhouse. The fields stretched endlessly around them, golden waves swaying gently in the breeze. Silas sat on the porch, a blanket draped over his legs, gazing out at the land he loved. "How are you holding up?" Nathan asked, sitting beside him. Silas chuckled softly. "Better than I look, probably. You?" Nathan hesitated, then smiled. "I think I'm starting to get the hang of things. But I still don't understand why you picked me. Out of everyone, why me?" Silas turned to him, his gaze steady. "Because you reminded me of myself years ago. Hard-working, honest, unsure of your own worth, but capable of greatness if given the chance. I saw potential in you, Nathan. Potential to do better than I ever did." The words struck Nathan deeply. For so long, he'd seen himself as ordinary, insignificant. But Silas saw something else, something worth believing in. "Thank you, Nathan." But Silas saw something else. "Thank you." But Silas saw something else. "I'll go, sir," Nathan said finally, his voice tinged with confusion. "I don't understand what's going on, but I'll do as you ask." Silas closed his eyes briefly, resting though his demeanor suggested he carried the weight of someone who knew the future was about to shift. "It's all prepared," he murmured, almost to himself. "Just trust me, Nathan." The next morning, as Silas began to regain some strength, Nathan felt a strange mix of apprehension and expectation swirling within him. They drove in silence to the dealership, and Nathan's heart pounded louder with each passing mile. The building loomed ahead, a sleek structure of glass and metal, modern and unassuming at first glance. Yet as they stepped inside, a premonition washed over Nathan, warning him that something monumental was about to unfold. Silas, though visibly weaker, walked with slow but deliberate steps. The atmosphere inside was calm, almost eerily so, with only a few employees milling around. The manager seated behind. "You now have an important role, Nathan. Don't forget what's truly important: respect for people and the company. Don't let yourself be corrupted by power." Those words sank deep into Nathan's heart, resonating with a clarity he hadn't expected. Somehow, he knew this moment would change his life forever. The tension dissipated as the police led the manager away, leaving behind a heavy silence. Nathan swallowed hard, his chest tight with emotion. I accept. I don't know what to say, but I'll do my best." He looked at Silas, still struggling to fully comprehend what had just transpired, but feeling the immense responsibility settling onto his shoulders. "I promise I'll keep my feet on the ground and help others, just like you've helped me." Silas smiled, his face tired but satisfied. "That's all you need to do, Nathan. The rest will come in time. But remember, your responsibility goes far beyond this place." They left the dealership, a sense of victory hanging in the air. Silas seemed. Nathan's hand pressed firmly against the farmer's chest, his eyes filling with anguish as he watched Silas struggle for breath. I'm not well, Nathan, Silas whispered, his voice strained and faint. His face was pale, the pain etched deeply into every line of his weathered skin. No, please, Nathan pleaded desperately, panic rising in his throat like a storm surge. He sprang to his feet, pulling the frail man into his arms with trembling urgency. Stay with me, please. I'll take you to the hospital right now. They left the restaurant in a blur, Nathan's mind racing faster than his legs could carry them. Fear clawed at his chest as he guided Silas toward the car, the farmer's body growing weaker by the second. Please, don't leave me, Nathan thought frantically, his heart pounding like a drumbeat against his ribs. The wind whipped across his face as he sped down the road, the tires screeching beneath him. Each mile felt endless, each moment unbearable. Silas slumped in the bear. His breathing was erratic, fragile. Nathan's heart shattered further as he approached, gently taking the farmer's hand in his own. You're with me, sir, Nathan choked out, his voice trembling. You're not going to leave me, please. I don't know what to do without you. Silas managed a faint smile, his gaze calm despite the pain. I always knew you'd be capable, Nathan, he rasped, his voice barely audible. From the start, I saw in you the son I never had. I trusted you completely. The words pierced Nathan's soul like a knife. Tears welled up in his eyes as he squeezed Silas's hand tighter. I promise, sir, I'll honor your legacy. I'll continue what you started. But Silas's breathing grew shallower still, and soon the doctors returned, adjusting machines around him. He's fading, one of them murmured regretfully. No, Nathan cried, his voice breaking. You can't leave me like this. Silas smiled one last time, his eyes shining with the same quiet confidence that had defined him. The wind brushed against Nathan's face, carrying with it a mix of sorrow and resolve. He felt the weight of responsibility settle in his chest, but alongside it came a renewed energy, a quiet determination to move forward. Today was the day of tribute, a gathering at the farmer's house to honor Silas, the man who had shaped so much of their lives. Yet for Nathan, this wasn't just about mourning. It was about celebrating the life Silas had built and the legacy he had entrusted to those left behind. The room buzzed with stories, laughter, and tears as people shared memories of Silas. But Nathan stood apart, absorbing every moment like Karma herself, weaving threads of connection. It was as if Silas was still there, watching over them all. Nathan smiled faintly, his heart heavy yet warm. You always knew I could do this, didn't you? He thought, glancing around at the faces of those gathered. Just then, the housekeeper entered the room, her expression solemn. In her hand, she held an envev. Nathan looked down at the letter once more. Taking a deep breath, he replied, Yes, now more than ever. It wasn't just an answer. It was a commitment, a turning point. He knew difficulties would come, but with them would also come opportunities to grow, to honor everything Silas had taught him. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Nathan would not give up. Not after everything he had experienced. Not after Silas's final words, which still reverberated in his mind. Fueling his soul with renewed strength. Days later, Nathan returned to the dealership, not as a mere employee, but as its manager. The weight of Silas's legacy rested heavily on his shoulders, but he carried it with resolve. The first few days were chaotic, filled with meetings and decisions. But Nathan remembered what Silas had taught him. Change begins with the basics. Respect people. Treat them with dignity. He began implementing a new system, one that valued even the most overlooked employees, those who had O. Nathan stood at the head of the conference room, his gaze sweeping over the faces of his employees. Each one looked back at him with a mix of curiosity and skepticism, but he was determined to change that. "I need everyone to feel part of this," he said firmly, his voice steady yet warm. "We are a team, and each one of you has something important to contribute." The words hung in the air for a moment, and then it happened. A flicker of light appeared in their eyes, something Nathan had never seen before. It wasn't just recognition, it was validation. For the first time, they felt seen, not merely as workers who clocked in and out, but as individuals whose efforts mattered beyond the daily grind. As Nathan left the room, he felt a surge of satisfaction. This was progress, but he knew better than to stop there. "This is just the beginning," he muttered under his breath. "We need more than words. We need action." The transformation of the dealership wasn't the only change Nathan experienced. "I need to go there," he said quietly. Her knowing eyes met his. "You want to go to the tree, don't you?" He nodded, unable to find the words. Deep down, he knew visiting the tree planted in Silas's memory was essential. It was there that he would feel closest to everything he had lost, and everything he now carried within him. With his heart pounding, Nathan made his way to the spot. As he approached, the tree loomed larger than he remembered, its roots gripping the earth like anchors. When he reached it, he knelt and placed his hands on the rough bark, closing his eyes. In that moment, he felt Silas's presence stronger than ever, a quiet reassurance that rippled through him. The pain of loss still lingered, but it no longer overshadowed the gratitude swelling in his chest. He couldn't undo the past, but he understood now that he had the power to shape a better future, for himself and for others. "I did what I could," Nathan thought, his voice thick with emotion. "And I will keep doing